So welcome. My name is Chetan Parkyn. I'm somebody who has, let's just say, spent most of his life reading for people, one way or another. And in 1979, I was given a copy of the I Ching. And it was a English translation of a German translation of a Chinese work. I Ching goes back many, many years, thousands of years. And one of the translations for it in English is the Book of Changes. So in these times of massive changes, I figured it would be an interesting thing to put out what it is I've come to understand about the I Ching. Now, 1979 was the first time I got a copy of the I Ching. As I say, it's a translation of a Chinese work. And in China, the language there and the whole understanding of language is done through pictures and through symbols relating to pictures. So it's very right brain stuff. The Western world is much more left brain stuff and, more logical and this because of that, supposedly. Now, in human design, those of you that are familiar with human design will know we're moving out of a time of logic, we may be even moving out of a time of abstract, and we're moving much more into the time of the individual. That is with the coming of these years ahead of us. And already we can see the changes going on around us. Democracy is having a lot of trouble sustaining itself. So without further ado, what I want to talk about today, because today is officially in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the summer equinox. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's the winter equinox. And so in the Earth where it wobbles, the wobble now, the sun is right over the top of what we call the Tropic of Cancer. And so the sun today is as far north as it will go on the globe. So midsummer, longest day of the year, and in the I Ching, or in the I Ching that we see relates to the human design system, we're talking about hexagram number 15. So those of you familiar with this particular hexagram, it's right at the bottom of the wheel here in the human design wheel. It's in the self center, that's the diamond center, often called the G center. G center because it relates to the Fibonacci sequence and the spiral of life, perfect geometry. And the 15th gateway is a gateway, curiously, that is common to all living things. In the Book of Lines, I've chosen to call it humanity. And it's the gateway of extremes. So we know in the human condition, there's all kinds of different ways in which humanity lives. All different kinds of climates, all kinds of different places. And what I've written about this, in all the possible extremes and conditions that life offers, there is a place and role for everyone. And so we say love of humanity. At the same time, we say it's also the gateway that connects into all life forms. So whether we're talking about people, whether we're talking about animals, whether we're talking even about microbes, there's this whole thing of cohesiveness through the 15th gateway. From our human point of view, what I describe this center about, it's really about trust. It's about trust of us coming together and recognizing our interactions with each other in that everybody has a place in things. And if you happen to have this 15th gateway in your design, you will know that there are certain people who might be considered outcasts in certain parts of life, that in your company, they have this sense of being accepted and joined in. Another description for it, especially for the human side of things, having friends and acquaintances in all levels of society implies you might have difficulty being dependent on or controlled by anyone in particular. So there's a certain sense of, yes, you can have a place in my life, but, also give me space. Give me space to be able to acquaint or adjust my life into other people's lives as well. So a sense of fixity around the 15th gateway is tricky for people. Now, in human design, we know the 15th gateway, because it's a gateway, it has the potential connection into the 5th gateway on the other end of the channel through this channel that we call rhythm. And I call it being in the flow of life. So we say it's common to all living things, but we also say the 15, because it's in this rhythm, there are certain situations where there's a natural match, there's a natural frequency match into connecting with other people and other circumstances. So I'm saying it's common to all living things. So when the birds want to fly north, they fly north, and that's part of their natural flow. It's part of universal timing that comes with that whole channel, the 515. So today we are here in this particular situation of being Midsummer's Day in the Northern Hemisphere, Midwinter's Day, we would say, in the Southern Hemisphere, and we're in this particular line, the 15 line 2. Whenever you come across a second line, traditionally, from early days, it was called the line of the hermit. The hermit being the one who kind of hides away, keeps back, and doesn't really show themselves. But there's also a flip side to it as well. That certain shyness with the second line can also be very much a boldness. It has its equal and opposite side of things. So what we also say about second lines is they're very happy in their own company. They don't necessarily want interruption all the time. They don't necessarily need other people's inputs or feel like they need other people's input. So I say about the second line, natural. It's a line of naturalness. So in this 15th hexagram, we're going to say, in this humanity, in this whole environment of connecting with each other, acceptance of each other, the second line is very natural, very easily makes friends, very easily makes connections. So Midsummer's Day here in the Northern Hemisphere, Midwinter's Day in the Southern Hemisphere, great time to get together, great time to recognize our interaction and correspondence with each other. So the name I've given this particular line number is being persistent, right? So we bring in the word natural, this humility that comes with the 15th hexagram, being persistent, finding reassurance by maintaining your sincerity and integrity. And it's about just holding true to one's own nature. If I say a second line is not necessarily sophisticated, there's always this thing, well, you're supposed to do it like this and you should do it like that, and you're supposed to behave in a different way. And, that kind of helps the second line close down. I really don't want this kind of input. But here the line is saying, be persistent, stay true to your own way of doing things. And then we see your moderation as well as your extreme conduct has a profound effect on others. So it's just about finding that balance in all things. We're on the longest day of the year. There's the most solar energy available in the Northern Hemisphere here, the least solar energy in the Southern Hemisphere today. And then we see the particular lines that relate to this particular line number is the sun has a particular fixation here. So whenever we're talking about a hexagram, a gate, or a line, or anything else in human design, we're talking about a frequency. This is probably one of the most amazing things to understand about human design. It's all frequency. You ask a physicist about the nature of our body and how it's all held together, and they'll say, literally, it's a miracle. How can this happen? Because when you look closely at go right down to the subatomic level, there's nothing there. There's just a lot of space. So our presence here, our experience here, somehow has been orchestrated through frequency. And so if we're looking at the solar frequency, we'll look at the placement of the sun at the moment of our birth. Every single person on this planet has that particular unique frequency for this place in life and the space in time in which they were born. So here we are, the sun on this particular 15th hexagram in the second line. And what this particular activation says, the frequency of this second line around all the things I've described, is you have the strength to accept your own particular ways as natural in the flow of life. So we might say, out of all the days of the year, this is a really great day to recognize how important it is to be true to yourself and your own timing and your own rhythm and your own very particular ways. We're not living anybody else's life. That's one of the foundational things to understand about having this life on earth. We're not here to live somebody else's life. We're not here to live according to other people's input, ideas, concepts, whatever. We can borrow them. We can see which are the ways that work. But the second line here is very particular, saying you have the strength to accept your own particular ways. Now, of course, sun and earth are opposite each other. So we would have to read also for today, what would be the earth situation here. And the earth affecting this particular second line says, by comparing your extreme ways to other people's moderate ones, you can contrive outcomes. You can take advantage, or you can rearrange in how things work. So we'd have to see, the moment you bring the word compare or comparison into anything that you do, you're straying off your own unique course of life. So just to be really, really clear about this, there's tremendous possibility in embracing the 15th hexagram in the second line, the whole energy of today. But to also see, the moment you're kind of looking out the corner of your eye and seeing how somebody else doing things, you'll find comparison will take you out of the truth that it is of being your own self and true to your own nature. Going back again, being persistent, finding reassurance and maintaining your sincerity and integrity. Everybody has their own unique frequency. This 15 with the second line highlights that possibility of coming closer and closer and closer to accepting. Yeah. Be very leery about ever comparing anything in your life to what you perceive going on in somebody else's life. So there we are. That's what I have to share with you today. I hope this gives you a little bit more background, a little bit more review. We'll have another look at the third line as the sun progresses in there. Have a wonderful midsummer, midwinter's day. Bye for now.